Hola, sí. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us to the Friday seminar. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce Sara Gamboa. She's a macroevolutionary and macroecological researcher. She defended her PhD in the Complutense University in 2021. I had the pleasure to be one of her co-supervisors of the PhD project. Then she continued her career in the University of Vigo, where she expanded her interest in macroevolution, macroecology, looking at things like climatic niche breadth, biome specialization, beyond butterflies, who was the target of her PhD. So beyond that, including mammals, dinosaurs, other groups, also looking into things like taphonomic biases in the study of macroevolutionary patterns. And now she's working at the Museum of Halle in Germany. So please welcome Sara Gamboa.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I want to to thank the opportunity to be here today. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be in this institution talking about my research. So thank you, Robert, for the invitation. And I also want to thank Mercedes Paris and all the entomological collection crew. They are the reason why I'm here this week, and this collection and many other collections all around Europe are the reason I can conduct a big part of my research. So thank you. As kindly introduced by Juan, my name is Sara Gamboa. I'm very fortunate to hold a Ramon Areces fellowship to study in the Zentralmagazin Naturwissenschaftlicher Sammlungen, aka Natural History Museum of the Martin Luther University in Halle-Wittenberg in Germany. And I'm even more fortunate to be visiting entomological collections in Southern Europe during the German winter. So if I need to put myself in a box, I will classify myself as a macroecologist and an evolutionary biologist, focused on the study of ecological specialization. We are more or less familiar with the concept of ecological niche, the role that species and sometimes also populations play in the ecosphere. We can think of ecological niche as a multidimensional space in which each axis corresponds to a single resource or environmental variable. And the thing is that for each of these axes, each species of population show a certain range of tolerance or resource use. Some of them show a very narrow ranges of tolerance or resource use, while others show broader ranges. And this is very, very cool because it helps us to discriminate, to separate the species. So those species using narrow range of resources or tolerating narrow ranges of environmental variables are what we call specialists, while those using broader ranges are generalists. It's very important to remember that we need to consider this specialist generalist thing for each axis at a time. For example, when talking about salinity, goldfish are considered to be specialists, while salmons are generalists. If we talk about food, or about the diet, anteaters are specialists, while foxes are generalists. And when looking to the number of different environments a species can thrive in, brown bears are generalists, while polar bears would be a specialist. But as I said, we need to look a single axis at a time. Because if we consider the diet, both brown and polar bears are considered to be generalists. And when looking to the number of biomes or environments a species can survive, both anteaters and foxes are also generalists. And why is this important? Well, we know that there is a very uneven distribution of biodiversity across our planet, but also across our tree of life, with some groups showing thousands of species, while others have just a single species, 2 species. But also, we know that ecological adaptation is key when understanding and when understanding which species survive, which species die and go extinct, and also which species change through time. And putting all these things together, there is a key question that comes to our minds, or at least to my mind, but is, what happened with ecological specialization? What is the relationship between ecological specialization and the evolution of the species, and how fast the species evolve? And it leads me to the line of scientific line that has monopolized a big part of my work or life, that is biome specialization. In the last decades of the last century, paleontologist Dr. Elizabeth Berba proposed her resource use hypothesis with a very simple but powerful idea. Biomes are this big global scale environment, such rainforests, subtropical deserts, steppes, and so on. And Verba proposed that biomes are not just the background scenery of evolution and biodiversity, but the major arenas where macroevolutionary processes and patterns occur. Going back to this idea of a specialist and generalist, I said before, that some species are classified depending on the range of the environmental variable that they tolerate. When talking about biomes, this translates that species are adapted to thrive, to survive in a specific range of climatic conditions, mainly temperature and precipitation. Meaning that those species, like dromedaries, are adapted to survive in very narrow conditions of temperatures and precipitations, while others, like wolves, can survive in a very range of environments because they can tolerate wider ranges of temperature and precipitation. But also, we know that climate changed through time. And these climate changes produce the contraction, expansion, by the end of the day, the fragmentation of these climatic regions and these biomes. And when this happens, with environments get fragmented, generalist species can adapt to these new conditions. They don't really care. They continue to have a genetic flow between their populations. So nothing really changed for them, broadly speaking. However, specialist species, they need to track, they need to follow their optimum climatic conditions. And by doing that, they can lose some populations can get extinct, and the surviving population can get isolated one from each other. There's not genetic flow between the populations anymore. And if this happens for enough time, eventually they can start different evolutionary patterns and become different species. So based on that, Elizabeth Verba proposed several predictions for the resource use hypothesis. The first one should be that we should find higher proportion of specialist species than expected by chance, because due to this climatic fragmentation, they tend to be produced. But also, we should find a higher proportion of extreme generalist species, those with very, very wide ranges of climatic tolerance, because yeah, it's true that they are not produced as often, but also it's true that they almost immortal. They are really, really hard to get extinct. But she went a little bit further, and she proposed that not every single biome responds the same to this climatic fragmentation. Those biomes located in the extremes of the climatic gradients of temperature and precipitation, namely the rainforests, the subtropical deserts, steppes, and tundras, should suffer from more climatic fragmentation, and thereafter they should provide more specialists through time. 40 years ago, Verba proposed this hypothesis, but also she tested using African mammals. And in the last years, we have been working on this idea using the new technologies and the new data available. And it has been very successful because we have published several papers in this line when we test the resource use hypothesis in different groups of mammals, in tortoises and turtles, and very, very recently, just like 1 week ago, on a new paper focused on squirrels. But today I want to present you, which is my favorite paper of this line. First, because I led it, and second, because it focuses on one of the most amazing groups on Earth, that is swallowtail butterflies. Swallowtail butterflies, as any other insects, are not very common to be found in macroecological studies. There's people not paying attention to them. But they are a very suitable group because they have a very good number of species with around 600 species. It's enough for macroevolutionary analysis, but not too much. Also, they live in every single continent but Antarctica, and they have colonized every single terrestrial environment. And happily, they have a well-resolved phylogeny. So for this paper, the thing we did the first was to use the distribution of the different species to extract the number of biomes they can survive in, they are adapted to live in. We translate this into this biomic specialization index, that it just means the number of biomes in which a species is present. And then we generate some null models to compare their reality with what is expected by chance. And by doing so, we saw that there's indeed more specialist species among swallowtail butterflies than expected by chance. Indeed, about half of all the species of the group are biome specialists. We also saw that for these moderate generalists, those species living between 2 and 4 different biomes, there are indeed less species than expected by chance. But also, even that there are few species, those extreme generalist species inhabiting 6, 7, or even 8 different biomes. As I said, there are very few species, but are more than expected by chance. So as you can see, swallowtail butterflies completely match Elizabeth Berbach's prediction about biome specialization. We then look what happens with biome specialist swallowtail butterflies, and depending on what they live, where they live. And again, we do see that there are more specialists than expected in rainforests, steppes, and tundra environments. The results for a tropical desert were not significant, but it's understandable because butterflies are strictly phytophagous, so tropical deserts is not a very good environment for them. And also, what it was surprising at the beginning, but we have checked that, and it also happens with other groups, is that we found more specialists than expected in tropical woodland, Mediterranean shrubland, and taigas. But again, it's easy to understand what is happening, because if you think about this expansion construction dynamics, this fragmentation dynamics of rainforest, it's not possible that the rainforest expand if the surrounding environment, that in this case is tropical woodland, contracts, and the other way around. So these biomes are working like duplas, like couples in fragmentation dynamics. So we test the recursive hypothesis with swallowtail butterflies. The results were amazing. But with this group, as I said, we have a well-resolved phylogeny. So we can go a step further. And we directly ask ourselves, does butterflies, this group of butterflies evolve, does a specialist swallowtail butterflies diversify faster than generalists? And the answer is yes. When looking to the diversification rates, we see that specialist butterflies diversify faster than generalists. And also, tundra and steppe specialists diversify faster than any other butterflies. Surprisingly, rainforest swallowtail butterflies show very moderate diversification rates. It could be due to 2 main reasons. The first one is that rainforests are very, very old, so they can be accumulating species through more than 60 million years. So maybe that's the reason. But also, I told you that the phylogeny is very well resolved, but we are still lacking some species. And most of the species lacking in the phylogeny are rainforest specialists, so maybe this is affecting our results. So thank you to this and similar papers, we can say that specialists do form faster, they get extinct faster, and they at least partially affect to the uneven distribution of biodiversity we say today. Because the adaptation to a biome or to several biomes is not just an ecological outcome, it's a macroevolutionary driver itself. And because I say that these results help us to understand this uneven distribution of biodiversity on Earth, I need to talk about the most classic question on biogeography ever. That is, why are there more species in the tropics? We have been asking this same question for more than 200 years. And during this time, we have gathered several possible answers. Maybe it's a matter of productivity, or maybe it's because tropical regions are older or maybe larger than other regions, or maybe it's just a matter of probability. But if we go back to the framework of biome specialization we were discussing before, we can try to approach this question from another side. Remember that we said that climatic fragmentation and the environmental fragmentation that comes with are not really affecting generalist species because they can thrive in these new conditions. But when climate fragmentates, it can promote the appearance of new species through the isolation of the populations. And also, we said that not every climate, not every environment is affected the same by this climatic fragmentation. Tropical, arid, polar environments should be more fragmented, and because of that, producing more specialist species than cool and temperate environments. So, using this approach in this paper, we studied the climatic fragmentation of the last 5 million years on a global scale using the PaleoPGIM paleoclimatic simulator. And we get some very nice results. First of all, we see that indeed, both tropical and polar regions have suffered more climatic fragmentation during the last 5 million years than the others. And this is due to how they respond to climatic changes, but also to the physical geography of our planet. We all know the tropics in Asia and Oceania are marked by the humongous number of islands and archipelagos. But also there are a lot of polar islands in North America, and this is increasing the fragmentation just because how our planet is. Surprisingly, we also found more fragmentation than we expected in temperate areas. And again, we link that to the geography of our planet because most temperate areas are located in the periphery of the continents, which creates fragmentation during climatic oscillation. But also, there are very important areas of temperate environments in the altitudinal gradient of the tropical latitudes. We also find, surprisingly, that arid environments, mainly subtropical deserts and steppes, are way more stable, at least during the last 5 million years, than expected before. Okay, but how this translates to this idea? How is this correlates with why are more species in the tropics? Well, we use current climate variables that are available everywhere, but we also generate a bunch of different new variables related to the last 5 million years climatic fragmentation in our planet. And then we run models to try to understand, to explain the distribution of mammals, dividing them in specialist and generalist, again, biome specialist and generalist. And when running our model, just with current climate conditions, we can explain the distribution of generalist mammals about 54%, and 66% of the distribution of specialist mammals, which is quite good. But if we take out all current climate variable and we just use this plethora of new historic fragmentation that we have developed in this study, and we run it with the distribution of mammals, when we can explain 95% of the distribution, the current distribution of generalist mammals, and the 91% of specialist mammals. So climatic fragmentation, along with the geological story of our planet, has been a powerful evolutionary force, especially in the tropics, while the stability of arid and cold areas have allowed generalists to accumulate through the last million years. And this is very important because this can help us to understand the unevenness of the biodiversity distribution in our planet, but also it can help us to face the consequences of the climatic crisis we are facing right now. Of course, I'm not saying that, okay, this is the solution, this is how it works, because this is biology, nothing is as simple. But I'm optimistic that maybe with these results, along with many other papers that have been released in the last years and some amazing papers that are going to be released hopefully in the next months, perhaps little by little, after 200 years, we're getting closer to answer why are there more species in the tropics. And just to finish, I want to show you one of the last projects I've been working on, which talks about the division of food space. A few months before I was born, James Brown and Brian Moorer published what is considered to be the seminal paper of macroecology, when they explain they propose that the distribution of life depends on the division of the space, but also the food. In the last 35 years, macroecology has grown, has skyrocketed, providing us a lot of spatial patterns like species richness, spatial distribution of body size, spatial distribution of thermal tolerance, and so on and so on and so on. And the interest in macroecology has grown tremendously. And as well as the interest of macroecology combined with climate. However, and I have no idea why, the interest of this intersection between macroecology and diet, what was seminal for the field, is still unexplored. So the objective of this work was just to resume these ideas and to relaunch the conversation. And for that, we just made us some very simple questions. The first is, who is what across the world's biomes? How does being a biome specialist or a biome generalist, because now you know that I'm obsessed with this thing, shape that? And what does this mean for ecosystem functioning? Here again, we use terrestrial mammals. We use about 3,600 terrestrial mammal species. But again, it's important to remember that I'm not going to talk about diet specialization. Focus on biome specialization, where species live and how they tolerate climate, because eating fruit, being a frugivorous, is completely different if you live in a jungle or if you live in a desert. So we again, oh, this is off, but it's okay. We're using this range of 10 different biomes from rainforest to tundra and separating terrestrial mammals depending on the number of biomes they inhabit. Considering specialists, those living in one biome, moderate generalists, those living from 2 to 4 different biomes, and 5+ different biomes makes you an extreme generalist. The idea of again approaching this from biome specialization comes from this, I told you, this seminal work, but also thinking that if you're a specialist, no matter what you eat, everything you eat during the year needs to be provided by a single environment. It doesn't matter if there is a drought, seasons, it's a bad year, or there's a lot of competition. Your biome, the biome you're adapted to thrive in, needs to provide everything for you to survive. And if it doesn't, you're gonna die. While generalists have the possibility to track their food. They can follow the prey, they can follow the rains, they can move between different environments, so they have more options to survive. So we took terrestrial mammal distributions along with their diet, and we construct an multidimensional niche space, food space, sorry, what we call dietary or diet space, using the different resources used by terrestrial mammals, such as fruit, greens, seeds, carrion, invertebrates. So using the different percentage of each food resource for each species, we can locate the different species in our dietary space. And then we can project this to the different biomes, dividing species according to the biome specialization category. And when doing that, we get really, really surprised because if you see generalists are occupying everything, almost everywhere. They are occupying almost the whole dietary space. Generalists, biome generalists, are the backbone of ecological functioning in biomes, in ecosystems. On the other side, on the other hand, biome specialists occupy less dietary space, and most of the space they occupy is also nested in the space occupied by generalists. So in most biomes, specialists are doing nothing new. They're not using different resources than generalists. They're doing the same. But this is not completely true, because in those colder, harsher, more seasonal environments, specialists are doing different things. They are consuming things that no other mammal is consuming. They are giving us uniqueness in ecological functioning. It's also very easy to see. I remember you that this is temperature and this is precipitation in classical Whitaker biome chart. So it's very easy to see that there is a high correlation between productivity and dietary space occupancy. And this is obvious. It was absolutely expected, because more productivity means literally more food. And if there's food, there's someone wanting to eat it. So it was expected. What is not as expected is what happened when we see what mammals are eating in the different biomes depending on their biome specialization category. Because I told you at the beginning that we naturally tend to think that if a species is a very generalist in one axis of the niche, it's going to be somehow generalist in other ones. So if we look to biome specialist species, we see that indeed there are many specialist diets, most based on fruits, sometimes in invertebrates. And it also happened with generalists that we also have biome moderate generalists being picky with food. So we could think, okay, so extreme generalists are going to be omnivores, but they don't. They heavily rely on other mammals and invertebrates, depending on their size. They are mobile predators, they are carnivores that move between biomes or among biomes, following their prey. So what does all this mean again? First, we have seen that generalists, especially moderate generalists, provide stability. These species are the ones keeping food trends running. We have also seen that specialists contribute to uniqueness. They add distinctive functions. And this is very important because, especially in colder, harsher environments, if we lose one species, we are going to lose ecological function that is not is irreplaceable. But also, because of this high redundancy we have seen, we need to learn how to look on how to monitorize our environments, because maybe if we're just attending that the food webs are running, all the ecological functions are covered, maybe we think the environments are going and doing well, but we are silently losing species. So the take-home message would be that species do not only partition the planet by where they live, they partition it by how they access energy, aka food, across space and time. And if we want to preserve our biodiversity, as uneven as it is, we need to know where redundancy is, where unique it is, and which ecological functions are more prone to disappear when facing environmental change. And just to finish, I want to thank all my colleagues, all my collaborators. Some are here today, many don't. So I want to express my gratitude to the teams of the MAPAS Lab in University of Vigo and the ZNS in Halle-Wittenberg University for their ideas, their support, their constant discussions that have made much of the ideas that I saw you here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sara. I think we have plenty of time for questions. So please shoot.
Thanks, Sara, for the nice talk and the nice presentation. Seeing it all together makes a lot of sense to why, I mean, and calling back to Elizabeth Verba is a nice way of putting it. But to me, as a biogeographer like you, a macroecologist, all these calls for effects of area. Okay, and let me explain that. I mean, usually generalists have wider areas, and so they have wider opportunities for reaching to other places. And when we have looked, because there is literature on trophic specialization, macroecological literature on that, when we have looked to that, and what we have seen is that trophic specialization is mainly driven by range size rather than the other way around. So species that have more narrower ranges appear to be, except in some cases, appear to be more specialist simply because they don't have access to other food, to other pieces of food. Have you tried to control for that, for range size, or even for the home range size of the species?
Thank you very much. Yes and no. For example, in the first work I presented, the one with swallowtails, that came to our mind for sure. And yes, we tested when taking into account being a specialist or generalist and this relationship with diversification. We test for area, and of course, area has an effect, but the effect of biome specialization is bigger. I thought about putting that in the presentation, but then I thought it was a little bit farragoso, so I decided to get it. So thank you for your question, so I can clarify that. In the second, in the last one, in the food one, we don't, because the main focus of the paper was to a calling about how we understand biomes using mammals. So we didn't try to understand mammal diet, in which, of course, you need to distinguish between climatic adaptation and just broader areas, especially with generalists. But because we were trying to call attention to the space part and to the conservation part, we didn't. But it's something I'm going to keep in my mind. Thank you.
If I might then re-questioning about that, because one other hypothesis about why are there more species in the tropics is that since it's not only that they are more productive, but the diversification rates are faster, but also ecological rates are faster, and the ecological heterogeneity is higher. Okay, so thinking about your results from the biome level, have you tried to look at the diversity of different types of diet within
Diversity of what?
the diversity of different types of diet within each biome?
It's on the pocket yet.
Yeah, okay.
It's in process. What we did already in another paper is to test the same, but not with climatic fragmentation, but with the classic hypothesis, the area, the stability, and we found no positive correlation or negative, no correlation with this with these classical approaches to the idea why more species in the tropics. Relating this with diet and with diversification is something we are working right now on.
Okay, thanks, Sara. Thanks for the nice talk.
Yeah, really awesome talk. Thank you. I have actually a bit similar question. So, for instance, if you think on migratory species, are these then, and they have at the same time occupy several biomes, are these really generalists, or do they simply track their niche over time, for instance?
It depends on the
Could
species.
you intersect this somehow with your results?
I never thought about that. It's true that some species, migratory species, are tracking. They are going to similar environments through seasons. But no, I never thought about that. I'm going to think about that. I have homework now.
Sorry, weekend.
No,
and
it's exciting.
And the same kind of question basically also for hibernating species, because could
Sorry?
there be hibernating species, so they're sleeping in winter, whether they are more specialists than? Could you check this in your data set?
Okay, now you need to write
For
down
those
this
living
and
in the
send me.
north, right? If they are hibernating in winter, maybe that's why they are appear more as specialists.
What we discuss in the discussion of this last paper is that indeed there are some, we just use several examples of this migration because it happens with one of the, it was this giant bats in Australia that is literally tracking the fructification of a single bush in Australia. So it's living everywhere. This is producing fruits. And we also talk about some examples of hibernation because this help us, help specialist species to cope with the harsher part of the winter. And this is also why you get this very unique ecological function in colder, harsher environment, because you have this kind of phenological way to cope with climatic stress.
Okay, we have time for a couple more questions, maybe. Okay. Well, otherwise, thank you, Sara.
Thank you
for
so
your
much.
presentation. And I would say let's meet in the kiosk, but it's raining, so I don't know about that. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.